Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. John woke up to the incessant beeping of his alarm clock. He rolled over with a groan and slapped the snooze button before sitting up in bed. Running a hand through his messy brown hair, he blinked the sleep from his eyes and glanced at the outfit he had laid out the night before. A knee-length floral dress hung neatly over his desk chair, paired with a soft pink cardigan and matching heels. John felt a thrill of excitement as he looked at the feminine attire. After years of hiding his preference for women's clothing, he had finally worked up the courage to wear a dress to the office. John got ready methodically, showering and shaving before blow-drying his short hair into a stylish, side-parted look. He applied light makeup to accentuate his features, just enough mascara and lip gloss to give his face a subtle glow. Satisfied with his reflection, he donned the outfit piece by piece, smoothing out the dress and stepping into the heels. The walk to work was nerve-wracking. John kept his head down, clutching his shoulder bag tightly. He focused on the comforting swish of his skirt around his knees and clicked his heels on the pavement. Upon arriving at the office, John hesitated before pushing through the revolving doors. He took a deep breath, straightened his cardigan, and walked inside with as much confidence as he could muster. The familiar ding of the elevator announced his arrival on the 5th floor. John kept his gaze fixed straight ahead as he made his way to his cubicle. The office was busy as usual for a Monday morning, with the chatter of voices and the hum of the copy machine in the background. No one even glanced in John's direction. He sat down at his desk with a quiet sigh of relief. The first step was done. He had made it to work in his dress without incident. Now came the real test: actually getting through the workday. John booted up his computer and tried to focus on the report he had been working on, but he couldn't ignore the bundle of nerves in his stomach. He felt exposed and vulnerable, constantly wondering if his coworkers had noticed his outfit. The morning dragged on. John typed and deleted sentences, reading the same paragraphs over and over again. He tugged at the hem of his dress, crossing and uncrossing his legs. He had never realized just how restrictive men's slacks were compared to the freedom of a skirt. At noon, the office staff filtered into the small kitchen for coffee. John hovered in the doorway, unsure whether to stay at his desk. His heart pounded as Claire from Human Resources approached with a friendly smile. "Cute blouse," she exclaimed. "Is it new?" John blinked, confused for a moment before realizing she thought it was just an everyday women's top.
"Oh, yeah, thanks,"
he stammered.
"Just got it recently."
Claire nodded approvingly. "It looks great on you. The floral pattern is so pretty for spring." "Thank you," John said, blushing slightly at the unexpected compliment. Claire's casual acceptance of his clothing felt like a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. John grabbed a cup of coffee, his confidence growing. He chatted casually with a few other coworkers, even laughing at one of Stan's terrible dad jokes. No one else mentioned his outfit, but they didn't treat him any differently either. The afternoon brought a shift in the office atmosphere. At first it was subtle, a lingering glance here, a pause in conversation there. But soon the whispers started, low voices just out of earshot discussing John's attire. He kept his eyes glued to his computer screen, trying to ignore the burning sensation creeping up the back of his neck. With each passing hour, the office felt smaller and smaller, like the walls were closing in on him. The floral dress that had made him feel so confident that morning now seemed glaringly out of place. John jumped when Stan from accounting appeared beside his desk. "Hey, man," Stan said, leaning against the cubicle wall. "Just wanted to say, don't let the gossip get to you." John's shoulders tensed. "What gossip?" Stan grimaced.
"Yeah, word about the, dress, it's spreading pretty quick. But don't worry about it, all right? Anyone gives you trouble, I've got your back."
John managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Stan." As soon as Stan left, John put his head in his hands. The dress rustled softly with the movement. He had been naive to think he could avoid the office rumor mill. This wasn't some liberal New York ad agency. It was Middle America corporate headquarters, filled with small-town minds. Footsteps approached John's cubicle, and he looked up to see Claire hovering nervously in the opening. "Hey, about earlier," she started, not quite meeting John's gaze. "I didn't realize that was an actual dress. I thought it was just a flowy blouse."
John swallowed hard. "It's okay, Claire."
"Well, I just wanted to say if I had known, I wouldn't have said anything," Claire continued. "Wearing dresses isn't exactly professional. For men, I mean." John gripped his mouse tightly, willing his voice to stay steady.
"I appreciate your concern, but I can still do my job, regardless of what I'm wearing."
Claire nodded, her expression pinched. "Of course, I'll just leave you be." As she hurried off, John noticed several other co-workers peeking over the cubicle walls, their curious eyes quickly darting away when he made eye contact. John's cheeks burned hot with embarrassment and anger. Suddenly, the heavy footsteps of expensive leather shoes entered the cubicle. John's stomach dropped as he looked up to see his boss, Mr. Jones, looming over him. The man wore a permanent scowl on his jowly face as he surveyed John's outfit.
"Winters!"
Mr. Jones barked.
"My office, now!"
John rose slowly from his chair, smoothing the front of his dress. He followed Mr. Jones through the maze of cubicles, feeling as if he was being led to the gallows. When they reached his office, Mr. Jones shut the door firmly behind them.
"What the hell are you wearing?"
Mr. Jones demanded. John stood up straight.
"It's a dress, sir." "I can see that,"
Mr. Jones snapped.
"Would you care to explain why you thought that was appropriate attire for the office?"
John took a breath.
"It's just clothes, Mr. Jones. I'm still capable of doing my job, regardless of—"
"Listen here, Winters," Mr. Jones interrupted. "I run a professional establishment. I can't have you prancing around in dresses, confusing everyone and distracting from their work."
"With all due respect, sir, I hardly think—"
Mr. Jones held up a hand.
"I don't want to hear it. This sort of deviancy won't be tolerated here. You need to go home immediately and change into proper men's attire."
John's hands curled into fists at his sides.
"Deviancy? It's just a dress, for God's sake!" "Watch your tone,"
Mr. Jones growled.
"You know exactly what I mean. I won't have you parading around here in women's clothing, making a spectacle of yourself." "Why does it matter so much?"
John argued.
"I'm not hurting anyone. My work is still the same."
Mr. Jones's face turned an angry shade of purple.
"That's enough! I want you out of that frock and back here in a suit and tie by tomorrow morning, or you're fired. You hear me?"
John opened his mouth to respond, but Mr. Jones cut him off.
"I mean it, Winters. Now go home and think long and hard about if this job is really worth more to you than your little dress-up games."
John clenched his jaw, fists trembling at his sides. After a long, tense moment, he turned on his heel and wrenched open the office door. The walk back to his cubicle was even more excruciating than the first time, with curious eyes watching him from all directions. John grabbed his shoulder bag and strode quickly to the elevators, head high despite the tears stinging his eyes. He jabbed the down button repeatedly until the doors slid open. As soon as John was safely inside with the doors closed, he finally released the tears. They streamed down his face as he leaned heavily against the elevator wall. The floral dress suddenly felt like a prison, the cardigan strangling him. John rushed out of the building, gasping for air. He hurried to his car, fumbling with the keys with shaking hands. He collapsed into the driver's seat, letting his head fall against the steering wheel. The tears came harder now, his body shaking with sobs. John sat in the parking lot for a long time, letting his tears run their course. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red and puffy. He started the car with still shaking hands and drove home in silence. Once inside his apartment, John immediately stripped off the floral dress and cardigan. He stared at the crumpled outfit now laying on his bedroom floor. The excitement and confidence he had felt putting it on that morning seemed like a lifetime ago. With a heavy sigh, John opened his closet and pulled out a pair of black slacks and a plain white button-down. He dressed robotically, not even bothering to tuck in the shirt. When he caught sight of himself in the mirror, John paused. Smudges of mascara stained his cheeks. Lip gloss clung to his mouth. The pink muted and faded. Looking at his reflection, John no longer saw the stylish, confident woman he had worked so hard to become that morning. Now he just looked tired and defeated, a broken man staring back at him. John's gaze drifted over to the makeup and wig resting on his bathroom counter. He had been so thrilled to finally have an opportunity to wear the wig to work, to show off his carefully applied makeup. Now the sight of them just made John feel foolish. With a sudden swell of anger, John swept the makeup brushes off the counter. They clattered noisily to the floor. He yanked open a drawer and grabbed the wig, throwing it inside and slamming it shut. Leaning heavily on the counter, John squeezed his eyes shut. Hot tears slipped down his cheeks again, smudging the makeup even more. He roughly scrubbed at his face with a washcloth until all traces of lip gloss and mascara were gone. John looked at his reflection once more. Besides the redness around his eyes, he looked like himself again, the boring, masculine version of himself that society deemed acceptable, the version that wouldn't lose him his job or make him the subject of office gossip. He shuffled to the living room and collapsed on the couch, not even bothering to turn on the TV. He sat, staring blankly ahead as the sky outside the window darkened. Finally, exhaustion overtook him, and he fell into a fitful sleep right there on the couch. The next morning, John woke up feeling just as miserable as the night before. He trudged through his morning routine, dreading having to go back to the office. Reluctantly, he put on the same slacks and white button-down from yesterday, deciding he didn't have the energy to pick out anything else. John's steps were heavy as he entered the office. The first few hours passed uneventfully, the floral dress from the day before seemingly forgotten. But just before lunchtime, the receptionist appeared at John's cubicle. "Mr. Jones wants to see you in his office," she said. "Now." John's stomach dropped. With a rising sense of dread, he made his way once again across the office floor to the corner office. He knocked tentatively on the door.
"Come in,"
Mr. Jones bellowed. John entered the room slowly. Mr. Jones was seated behind his large mahogany desk, looking even more intimidating than usual.
"Have a seat, Winters,"
Mr. Jones said gruffly. John perched on the edge of the stiff leather chair, clasping his hands tightly in his lap. Mr. Jones scrutinized John with a scowl. "I thought I made myself very clear yesterday," he began. "Proper men's attire or you're fired." "But sir, I'm not wearing a dress today," John said nervously. "No, you're not," Mr. Jones said. "But I see you just couldn't resist putting on more of that damn makeup." John's hand flew up to touch his face. He had completely forgotten about the smudged mascara and lip gloss from the day before. I'm sorry, I didn't realize," he stammered. Mr. Jones held up a hand. "Doesn't matter. I won't have you parading around here looking like a freak." John's chest tightened, his earlier nervousness turning into anger. "It's just a little leftover mascara. I'm hardly parading around, and I'm not a freak." Mr. Jones's face turned purple. "Don't get smart with me, boy," he spat. "I gave you clear instructions. Men in this office dress and look like men, not like tarts painting their faces." John gripped the arms of the chair. "I'm still a man, regardless of what I wear or how I look." "The hell you are," Mr. Jones sneered. "I won't have your kind around here, infecting the office with your unnatural ways. You're finished here." He tossed a file folder at John. "There's your severance paperwork. I want you packed up and out of here within the hour." John sat frozen for a moment, stunned. His hands trembled with anger and hurt. Slowly, he stood up, clutching the folder. He met Mr. Jones's glare steadily. "For the record, you're the one behaving shamefully here," John said, his voice tight but calm. "Firing someone over clothing or makeup choices
Choices that don't affect their work performance at all is ridiculous and wrong. Mr. Jones just shrugged. Maybe so, but I refuse to have a freak like you on my staff. John shook his head sadly and turned to leave. Good riddance, Winters, Mr. Jones called out as John reached the door. Don't let the door hit you in that powdered behind on the way out. John paused, drawing in a shaky breath. He walked out of the office with his head high, not giving Mr. Jones the satisfaction of seeing how much his words stung. His cubicle seemed to have shrunk even more in size during his absence. As John slowly packed up his meager belongings, he could feel his co-workers' eyes following his every move. Whispers drifted through the office, punctuated by quiet laughter. John kept his gaze fixed straight ahead, ignoring them all. With his box of belongings tucked under one arm, John strode quickly toward the elevators. He jabbed the call button repeatedly until the doors finally slid open. Only once he was safely inside did John finally release the tears that had been welling up. He leaned heavily against the elevator wall as he descended, letting the tears fall freely. This time, when John emerged from the building, anger had replaced his earlier devastation. Mr. Jones could ridicule and fire him, but John refused to be ashamed of who he was. He tossed the box angrily into the back seat. As John started the car, he took one last look at the office building looming above him. I won't let you break me, he said quietly, steel in his voice. John spent the next few days in a daze, struggling to come to terms with his sudden unemployment. He spent most of his time at home, browsing through online fashion stores and adding dresses, skirts, and blouses to his virtual shopping cart. One evening, after a particularly long bout of online shopping, John decided to treat himself. He poured himself a glass of wine and sat down on the couch, feeling the familiar warmth spread through his chest as he took a sip. As the wine loosened his inhibitions, John began to question his decision to leave his job. Sure, Mr. Jones had been a tyrant, but was getting fired really the best thing for him? What would he do now? How would he pay the bills? The questions swirled around in his head as he took another sip of wine. Suddenly, he felt a surge of defiance. He wasn't going to let Mr. Jones win. He was going to embrace his true self, no matter the cost. With newfound determination, John continued his shopping spree. He added more expensive items to his cart, splurging on designer dresses and high-end makeup. He knew it was reckless, but he didn't care. He deserved to treat himself after everything he had been through. The next morning, John woke up with a hangover and a heavy heart. The reality of his situation began to set in. He had spent a fortune on clothes and makeup, and he still didn't have a job. What was he going to do now? John booted up his laptop and started searching job sites. He tailored his resume, emphasizing his successful track record and strong work ethic. Within an hour, he had submitted applications to a half-dozen companies that seemed progressive and open-minded. Over the next few days, John tirelessly scoured listings and networked with contacts. To his surprise, he quickly got calls to interview at 2 different firms, a PR agency and a tech startup. The morning of the first interview, John carefully selected an outfit: a black pencil skirt paired with a silky pink blouse and low heels. He took his time applying makeup and styling his wig. When he looked in the mirror, John saw a strong, confident woman staring back at him. John strode into the PR agency with his head held high. The receptionist didn't bat an eye at his attire. When he was brought back to meet with the hiring manager, John was greeted with a warm smile. The interview went smoothly. John's skills and experience were a perfect match for the role. The hiring manager seemed impressed by John's passion and obvious knowledge. There was no awkwardness or judgment, only thoughtful questions about John's background. At the end, the hiring manager extended her hand. It was wonderful to meet you, John. We'd love to have you come on board. When can you start? John was shocked. A job offer just like that. And the manager hadn't said a word about his outfit.
Buoyed by the success, John headed to the tech startup interview with even more confidence. Again, the hiring team was focused on John's abilities, not his appearance. He aced the technical questions. By the end, they were sold on bringing him on as a senior developer. John ended up accepting the startup role. The base salary was nearly $20,000 higher than his previous job, and the company culture was all about openness and inclusion. He could wear whatever he wanted. On John's first day, he stepped into the office in a flowing sundress and kitten heels. He was greeted with smiles and handshakes, warmly welcomed onto a team where his skills were valued. At his new desk, John took a moment to process it all. He had taken a leap of faith, refusing to hide his true self any longer, and he had landed firmly on his feet in a place where he could thrive as his whole self, dresses, makeup, and all. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.